You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
Welcome to the Midnight Book Club. Tonight, we are taking a journey through Unexplained. Exclamation point. The new edition by Jerome Clark himself. We're going to be learning about reptoids and little green men. You might be saying, what the heck is a reptoid? You're just going to have to sit down and buckle up, because the reading is about to begin. Let's get there. Those not in the know will learn tonight that reptoids are some of the most interesting creatures to step from beyond the veil. Now, whether they are PLFs, program life forms, creatures from another dimension, creatures dropped off by extraterrestrial UFOs from outer space, or simply biological creatures that we do not know of yet, who knows? But a reptoid, imagine a reptile version of Bigfoot. And there you go. You got yourself a reptoid. We're going to learn the history tonight of reptoids, sightings, encounters, and evidence. And let me give you a hint. They're real. In 1954, archaeologists on an expedition along the Amazon River encountered a bizarre aquatic biped with gills and scales. In November 1958, a Riverside, California man, driving in a car near the Santa Ana River, was attacked by a similar creature with a round, scarecrowish head, shiny eyes, and scales. It left long scratches on his windshield, and as he accelerated, he hit it and drove over it. The first story is from the classic science fiction film, Universal's The Creature from the Black Lagoon, 1954. The second is supposed to have happened in real life to an alleged witness named Charles Wetzel. The following evening, another motorist claimed that the same kind of monster jumped out of the bushes at his car. Riverside, 1954. Two separate people see the lizard man on two different nights. This was also when there was a lot of high strangeness going down in Ohio and across the country. People were having encounters with hairy bipeds and strange creatures in the late 50s through the 70s in spades. This is just one of them. Old Charlie Wetzel down in Riverside. Though fairly rare, accounts of reptilian bipeds crop up from time to time, usually in brief sighting reports. But the idea of such creatures was current at least as early as 1878, when Louisville Metropolitan Theater exhibited a wild man of the woods, described as 6 feet 5 inches tall and covered with fish scales. That sounds a lot like the Lake Worth monster. We just read about him last week. Presumably, or we just read about them last week. Presumably, the reptile man was an ordinary man garbed for the occasion, which was the culling of cash from the credulous. But nearly a century later, in October 1975, residents of a tiny Milton, Kentucky, north of Louisville, reported seeing a bipedal giant lizard. The lizard man strikes again. Both Milton and Louisville border the Ohio River. Oh gosh, you got to make me do it. I don't always like to bring this up, but boom, here it is. Now, if we look down the south of this map, that's towards the bottom there, that's where the Ohio River is. And that's what we just mentioned here in this book. Now, if you see all these creatures here, we are going to learn about the Loveland frogmen. And we're also going to learn about the green-clawed beast tonight. So 2 of the creatures tonight appear in this chapter, which is awesome from this little map here. So this is just a small sample of some of the creatures that were seen here in Ohio. Now, we talk about a lot of states in the 60s and 70s that have weird, strange events. But for some reason, Ohio seems to have the majority of them. Whether it be a portal, interdimensional time rift. The energy's right there. There's labs there underground creating all sorts of shit. Who knows? But Ohio was a place of high strangeness in the 60s and 70s, and I guess some would say even now. That doesn't mean this is the only place in America or the world where these kind of sightings are happening. This was just a concentrated place where, thanks to the research efforts of people like John A. Keel, there's a lot of what kind of evidence would you call this? Anecdotal evidence or first-person primary source, like witness evidence out here in Ohio that's been cataloged. So it's just the most famous. In California, as we just learned about, there were 2 lizard men running around along with a bevy of Sasquatch sightings, because, you know, Sasquatch, you know, made his nut out here in California. That's where he became famous. I digress, though. Ohio and the 60s, there was something going down. Both Milton and Louisville border the Ohio River. So does Evansville, where on August 21st, 1955, Miss Darwin Johnson was swimming. And this was what we're reading about. We just learned the green claw monster. This is him right here. Mrs. Darwin Johnson was swimming when a claw-like hand gripped her knee from below and pulled her under. She struggled with the unseen grabber and managed to free herself, but no sooner had she come to the surface than she was dragged down again. She was able to lunge at a friend's inner tube, and the thump she made on contact with it apparently scared the attacker away. Though never observed, the creature left a green palm stain on Mrs. Johnson's knee. Scratches and marks for which she sought medical attention. I mean, you know, Miss Johnson with the green marks. That sounds like, hey, taggy tag. What's up, my friend? Sounds like it could be a bruise, but you never know. Hope you're cruising. Hope Saturday's beautiful. Hope your week's been good. Anywho, she did go to the hospital for it. So that's like, you know, what are we going to do? Northeast of Cincinnati in Loveland, Ohio. You know who we're about to talk about right there. Along the Miami River, reports of more or less reptilian bipeds have been made since at least 1955. Correlation with the Reptoids visiting California in 1954. Were the sightings in Riverside connected? Were these frogmen traveling to Ohio? Or was there just rifts in different parts of the country? When a driver returning home from work at 3:30 a.m., the hour of the frog, on May 25th, reported that he spotted 3 grotesque-looking creatures with lopsided chests, wide, lipless, frog-like mouths, and wrinkles rather than hair on their heads. One held a spark-generating bar, aka a wand, above itself. He watched them from his parked car for 3 minutes, leaving to alert the Loveland Police Chief John Fritz. As he did so, he smelled a strong odor reminiscent of fresh-cut alfalfa, with a slight trace of almonds. Fritz found nothing, but was nonetheless convinced of the witness's sincerity. Now, when you're out in the middle of the swamp and you smell almonds with the fresh-cut scent of alfalfa, Frogman might be near. Nearly 17 years later, on March 13th, 1972, at 1 a.m., 2 Loveland police officers encountered something comparable. 17 years later, the Frogmen still chilling. A 4-foot-tall frog-faced biped with textured leathery skin. They saw it jump over a guardrail and descend an embankment leading to the Little Miami River. About 2 weeks later, one of the officers saw the thing again, first lying in the road and then getting up to go over a guardrail. He took a shot at it, but apparently missed. A local farmer also reported seeing such a creature. And there we go, the shot at it, right? That's what happens in these stories. People take shots at these creatures, but they never hit them. Maybe because they're just projections from another dimension. Or maybe because they are like extrasensory, able to dodge shit. like Neo in the Matrix. In the mattress. Mattress Revolutions. Now, the guy who encountered the frogmen at 3:30 a.m. was really lucky to have old Chief Fritz get out there right away and take his report seriously. Because in a lot of these things we read, it's a real crapshoot with the sheriff, right? You get the sheriff who doesn't believe you and then talks mess on your family, like the sheriff who dealt with the family who dealt with the Hopkinsonville goblins. Remember, in his report to Blue Book, he tries to paint the family as like religious fanatics, and they weren't, right? And you get that kind of sheriff, or you get old Chief Fritz. You get him on auto dial. You tell him, Fritzy boy, I got frogmen. Fritz is like, I'm there. And he looks for the evidence. So much so, they keep it on the record. 17 years later, 2 more of Fritz's boys, they encounter the frogman again. So there's something out in the Little Miami River. Is it still there? Who knows? Bet you it was captured by Disney by now. It probably lives underneath Imagination Village somewhere. That's probably what happened to Frogman. I mean, let's be honest. Disney definitely captured it. Even though I don't know why they'd be in Ohio, just because it was Miami River, I immediately thought Florida, so that's what made me think Disney, but still, it still stands. In the summer of 1972, at Thetis Lake, British Columbia. This is another, I love Reptoids. I mean, how can you not love Reptoids? These guys showing up, they're lizard men, they're swimming around, they're scratching cars, they're being little scamps. But anyway, the Thetis Lake monster, special place in my heart. One of my favorite Universal monsters, remember back in the day, is the creature of the Black Lagoon. Thetis Lake monster either took inspiration from it, or the creature from the Black Lagoon took its inspiration from Thetis Lake monster. In the summer of 1972 at Thetis Lake, British Columbia, there were 2 reports of a silver-colored creature that emerged from the water. In the first instance, on August 19th, to chase a couple of young men from the beach. One supposedly suffered lacerations in the hand from 6 sharp points atop the thing's head. A witness to the second incident on August 23rd said it was shaped like an ordinary body, like a human being body, but it had a monster face and it was all scaly. It had a sharp point on its head and great big ears. The following summer, people in the Newton Lafayette area of New Jersey told of encounters with a giant creature that looked like a cross between a man and an alligator. Now, not to be outdone by Ohio, New Jersey and the Pine Barrens, that like Devil's Triangle up there, also has a lot of strange creatures, namely the Jersey Devil, and what we just learned about here, this in near the Newton Lafayette area, this giant creature that was like a half man, half gator. So, we got, in the cryptid world, in the world of entity sightings, we've got a little bit of everything. You got half goats, half alligators, Sasquatches, which could be considered a missing link, or a half ape maybe. And it could be multiple different things, like the more avenues, let's say, you take, the more, because everyone seems to have a opinion on the why or the what, or like beyond being just like, hey, I believe people are having encounters with strange entities. People like to theorize and go beyond. For me, I feel a little too, I don't even like to tread on that. I feel too stupid to even try that. I'm just like, hey, I think it's real. I don't know what the fuck it is. But people who like to theorize about what these things are, with the many different avenues, there's so many, like, some people will say you don't even know what they could be, because they could be interdimensional. They could be from another planet, alien, extraterrestrial, whatever, interdimensional, from another dimension, portal, whatever it may be. Or they could be programmed life forms, which, if you're to believe some of the people who whistleblow and programs they've been in, programmed life forms are what we can create, whether it be illegal parts of the government or illegal corporations who run this kind of shit, and they can make these sort of things. if you're to trust some of the whistleblowers who like to come out and talk shit, you know? So it's really interesting. So there's that, or people think they're like interdimensional. There's like rifts opening up. These things are stepping through beyond the veil for a split second, and you can see them. People, and that's how they encounter them and then go like smoke. Or they're biological. They're just creatures we haven't seen yet. Maybe a different branch of humanity, say like for a Sasquatch, different branch of humanity that's just been out living in the woods, knowing nature, knowing that we humans mean death, staying away from us. Or these things are just like here because everything's happening all at once, all the time, past, present, future, different entities. We're all just on top of each other. And it's like, or sometimes frequencies meld together and then we're able to see shit that we're on finally like vibing with on the right frequency. So there's all these different avenues people like to go on and on about. But I just like, for me, it's like, I just think there's a lot more than meets the eye. But I love all the explanations why. We could talk for days about that. But who knows which one? Who's got it right? Probably none of us. I feel like we're just like, humans are just scratching the surface of the great beyond and like what's in the cosmos, you know? Little green men is a phrase used as an affectionate appellation for the subject matter of science fiction. Less affectionately, it is used to deride ufologists for their supposed gullibility and believing in something as absurd. In fact, relatively few persons reporting close encounters of the third kind, CE3s, sightings of UFO occupants, claim to have seen little green men, LGMs, a phrase that apparently goes back to the turn of the century to a turn of the century comic strip. One of the rare LGM tales comes from Barrelade in the Australian island state of Tasmania. A grown woman and her sister alleged that one evening in 1948, as they were putting out the dog, they noticed brilliant lights in the sky. When it moved away from them, they saw little green men sitting on a ledge on the side. They were singing in unintelligible words that sounded like a familiar melody, the Three Blind Mice. The story sounds like a joke, and that may well be exactly what it is. Like, why the fuck did you start your chapter off on Little Green Men about a story that's probably a joke? Jerome, we're trying to get people to take us seriously. Thank you very much. Another tale exposed as a hoax, oh great, by an investigator for the 1950s UFO group Civilian Saucer Intelligence of New York, concerned a little green man who reportedly landed in an egg-shaped object on a farm near Evattstown, New Jersey, on November 6, 1957. The farmer claimed that the being wore a green suit with shiny buttons, with a green hat like a tam, and gloves with a shiny object at the top of each glove. Speaking in broken English, the LGM declared ungrammatically, "We are a peaceful people. We do not want trouble. We just want your dog." When the farmer cursed the visitor and grabbed at him, the LGM fled into his spacecraft. You know, hoax or not, that story does go with the theme of these entities wanting to take our dogs and not having like a beef with them. You know, like Mothman, the Missouri Momo, several others all have dog beef. Literally and figuratively. A very small number of close encounters of the third kind, or CE3s, involve green men of normal height. Stereotypes aside, LGM and UFOs have very little to do with one another, and those ones are called MGMs, medium green men. But it's more common that we have LGM, little green men sightings. MGMs don't show up very much. LGMs show up in fairy lore and even in the occasional first-hand narrative. There we go. That's what I wanted to talk about, fairies. When someone claims a personal encounter with elves. More often, however, fairies are said to be clad in green, though that's not their skin color. Green-clad UFO beings figure in some CE3s, notably one that occurred on the afternoon of June 24th, 1947. North of Pendleton, Oregon. Around the time, Kenneth Arnold was witnessing 9 shiny discs over Mount Rainier, Washington. Again, lights in the sky, little creatures running by. And unwittingly ushering in the age of flying saucers. What he's talking about there with Kenneth Arnold, that's like, it's like what Kenneth Arnold did for flying saucers is the same thing the Patterson-Gimlin film did for Bigfoot. International celebrity Bigfoot was after that video. After Kenneth Arnold sees UFOs around Mount Rainier, which luckily when I grew up in Washington for a while and we could see Mount Rainier from where I was. No idea that was like the spot where UFOs started. That's so cool. But he sees these, what he describes as flying saucers. And then the media runs with that. Then UFO craze hits. Not long after that, we have the massive sighting over Washington, D.C. Again, a time of high strangeness. Lots of lights in the sky, lots of creatures running by. In the June 24th incident, farmer Bill Schwing saw a shiny silvery sphere hovering several feet above the ground. Just below it stood 2 little guys in green suits with white helmets. The figures, 3 feet high, suddenly vanished. The most bizarre LGM story goes back well before UFOs and extraterrestrials were staples of American popular The most bizarre LGM story, Little Green Men, goes back well before UFOs and extraterrestrials were staples of American popular culture. It is said to have happened one morning early in May 1913 on the Latham farm, 2.5 miles west of Farmsville in northeastern Texas. Sybil Latham, 12, and his brothers were chopping cotton when they heard the agitated barking of their 2 dogs. Their barking was unlike anything the boys had heard before. They sounded, Sybil Latham recalled in an interview many years later, just like they were in terrible distress. The boys first ignored the dogs, but when the howling continued, they decided to investigate. The 3 started walking towards the animals, which were 50 to 75 feet away on the other side of the picket fence. Clyde, the oldest brother, got there first. With a stunned look, he turned to the others and shouted, "It's a little man!" "I got there and I saw him," Sybil remembered. "He looked like he was resting on something." "Oh, he's just taking a little break." It's like a Keebler elf, dude. He's taking a break from baking all those cookies for us. He was looking towards the north. He was no more than 18 inches high and kind of dark green in color. He was the same smooth color all over. Now, if you're interested in fairy history, got a great little video about the history of fairies on my YouTubes. Check it out. I am going to do a director's cut and reshoot it, where we reread and recut it, but check it out. Because I believe, dude, I love fairy sightings are fucking wild, and they've been happening for a really long time, and they're slightly different than what people experience when they encounter UFOs and creatures of that sort. So I'm in on it, baby. Anyways, I love this guy. They found this little dude resting. What do these guys do when they find this guy resting? He didn't seem to have any shoes, but I don't really remember his feet. His arms were hanging down just beside him, like they was growed down the side of him. He had on a kind of hat that reminded me of a Mexican hat. It was a little round hat that looked like it was built onto him. He didn't have on any clothes. Everything looked like a rubber suit, including the hat. I think what this young man means is a sombrero. He stood still. I guess he was just scared to death. Right after we got there, the dogs jumped him. Oh no! Poor dude's having a rest and the dogs just jump on him. They tore him to pieces, reducing him to blood. Whoa. They tore him to pieces, reducing him to blood. Red like its human's equivalent, and eternal organs. If the being made any sounds as he was being killed, the Lathams could not hear him because of the racket the dogs were making. Oh no! Oh, that's awful. Oh man. What? Oh, the dogs. No. Just, we need to keep our pets and the strange apparently just away from each other. All right? Just Separation. It doesn't go good for anybody. Man, that poor creature. Just dusted by 2 pups. We were all just country as hell and didn't know what to do about it, Sybil said. I guess we're just too dumb to think about it. The next day, when the boys returned to the site to look at the remains, they had completely disappeared. Not so much as a blood stain could be seen. This strange tale remained unknown to the larger world until January 1978, when Sybil Latham's grandson, Lawrence Jones, wrote the Chicago-based Center for UFO Studies, CUFOs. My grandfather has the most solid reputation for truth and honesty, but has never told of this because of fear of ridicule, Jones wrote. He has agreed to tell this only after much prompting and encouragement from me, his history-oriented grandson. There is no question in my mind that he is telling the truth. The story, he added, has been discussed in my family for many years. Ooh! The shame, dude. It's like, that's like the time they murdered a mystical creature. Oof. Oof. On April 28th, at CUFO's request, Larry Sessions of Fort Worth Museum of Science and History interviewed Latham at length. Sessions described Latham as a neat old man. I wouldn't mind having him for my own grandfather, a remarkable man. Sessions, however, could not bring himself to believe such a fantastic story. There's no doubt that he believes that it happened, he acknowledged. But Sessions thought Latham could have unconsciously embellished a more mundane experience, such as sighting of an unusually big frog. Over the years, when this was suggested to him, Latham emphatically rejected the theory. His grandson expressed his confidence in his story's accuracy. And yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to go with that with Latham and like emphatically denying it, because I was lucky enough to grow up out in the woods in Washington near East Lake Sammamish and then Redmond out near the outskirts out in the heavily wooded area. And I got to spend so much time in the woods, hanging out, doing things in the woods as a kid. Like, it was back in the day, our parents were tight, so they didn't give a fuck. They just let me like wander around in elementary school in the woods. And you would see animals, and it was like, I remember these moments still. I remember that it was a deer, and I approached it, and I almost got so close to touching it, and it just kind of like acknowledged me and took off. And then there was a bear that we saw, and then we every now and then we would run across this like really scary teepee, me and my best friend, and we'd just run away from it because we knew it was probably just some not just some guy or gal or person living out there, and we didn't want to bother him. But you remember these things. So with Latham, this guy Sessions, this investigator dude, which, you know, fine, that's his opinion. Maybe it is just an embellishment. But he is just falling in, for me, it falls into the same trap of when you hear something extraordinary, you're automatically like, nope, let me find something mundane to explain this. Because our brains just aren't ready to accept that we live in a much more complex world than we do. Like beyond the pale type shit. So it tracks that Sessions is automatic. Like, no, he just saw like a big frog. And you suggest that to the guy who saw a creature that was obviously not a freaking frog. And he's like, no, it wasn't a frog. It's like, we got this guy, Latham, grew up in the woods. He's used to coming across animals. An extraordinary thing would be remembered like trauma is remembered. So it's like, I don't know. I feel it's just such a get out of here. It's like when people see a lake creature, and it's like our favorite. It's like, oh, you just saw a weird log, dude. It's like, no more of that. But anywho, I digress. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Now back to the book. Another LGM was reported by a Derry, New Hampshire man to ufologist Walter N. Webb. As the witness was gathering Christmas greens late one morning, he supposedly encountered a 2-foot-tall figure, a green-colored naked dwarf, with a high forehead, floppy ears, and a face like a bloodhound. Its eyes were lidless and reptilian, and its skin hung in folds over its body. It quietly studied the man for a few minutes, then started for me with a kind of screeching sound, and I left there. So it charged him, screaming as he was collecting Christmas greens. What's a Christmas green? I love that. In late 1966, the Israeli press reported a highly improbable tale out of Moshav Amahud, a collective agricultural community in the northern part of the country. One day, a 34-year-old woman, Zayona Damati, and her brother-in-law discovered a little green man in their barn. This was a truly little green man, no more than 2 inches tall. Those who said they saw it were especially puzzled by the greenish liquid that oozed from it continuously. Oh no! There seemed to be more liquid than such a tiny body could be expected to contain. Finally, someone touched it, causing the little green man's body to shatter into pieces. Woo! Woo! There, I'm sorry, I just got distracted. There's this little blurb here about hidden events. I thought it was like a cool, more encounters we don't know about, but it's just talking about what we just went over, like all these events being reported that scientists and like the mainstream media doesn't even hear about because people are afraid to report, don't want to be ridiculed, whatever it is. But yeah. So that is little green men. Little green men and reptoids. If you're asking me, 99% they're both real. We got little green men running around, whatever the fuck they are, oozing shit, exploding into pieces when you touch them. Then we got reptoids, scaly monsters stalking the backwoods of America and around the world. Lake Worth monster, another reptoid, but one covered in hair. Go along with the Loveland Frogman. Hopkinsonville goblins, which aren't mentioned here, but they're kind of reptoid-like. That was the Midnight Book Club. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be back Wednesday morning, bright and early, reading about weird shit bright and early in the morning. What we're gonna do Wednesday, and I'm excited to do it. I don't know if I have the book here. It's somewhere in my house, but we're gonna keep reading American Cosmic. And if you were with me at all for Encounters, it's written by D.W. Paulsuka, and it goes into, well, Encounters was about top-level scientists having encounters with angels, AI, UFOs, aliens, demons, you name it, and using that in their own work, kind of being beamed the information like Tesla would talk about. American Cosmic is her intro into the study of UFOs. And we get to meet and hang out with this dude named Tyler D, who is one of NASA's top scientists. That's not his real name. He uses a pseudonym because he talks about a lot of top secret shit. And he doesn't want his name out there and to be ridiculed and all this other stuff. However, his handlers in NASA know exactly what he's telling DW because he works on super top secret stuff. In the chapter we're going to read now, he takes DW to a field of debris that allegedly is UFO debris. And we learn in that chapter, which is something that blew my mind, when you're out there in the desert, you know, hiking around, walking around, looking around, and you come across a debris field that seems random. Like, why the fuck is there all this trash way out here in the middle of nowhere? A bunch of aluminum, metal, whatever it may be. That could be a UFO crash spot, because one of the tactics that the government uses in order to keep things under wraps is to spread trash everywhere on like a large debris field. So it kind of just, you don't know what the fuck you're finding. And it's not weird that you find metal way out in the middle of the desert. Just a bunch of it, you think it's just like a junk field. So, interesting stuff. We're going to dive into that Wednesday morning, so tune in if you're into it. Or if you're not into it and you just want to get angry and yell at me in chat, you can tune in for that too. That'd be great. But thank you for joining me. Midnight Book Club.